You call it a bearish opera, and on we go with the media. How do you sort out Act 1 from Act 3? How do you figure out what's going on if everyone's speaking Italian?
Yeah, well, the idea of the opera that came to me on Friday when Fed Chair Lael Brainard gave a speech in which she basically indicated the Fed is sort of between a rock and a hard place. I think it's actually between Volcker 2.0 and Bernanke 2.0. And so it is kind of a bearish opera. And the conclusion is that the opera ain't over until the Fed lady sings a more optimistic tune. She was very concerned about financial stability. It's really the first time that a Fed official talking about financial stability. And you said on the show that the financial stability is, in fact, one of the mandates. And the question is, how important is it? And I think it's number one.
Okay, it's number one is financial stability. Great. But the fact of the matter is when the facts change, any central bank changes. How close are we to the facts changing where we see it, we observe it in the Fed dialogue?
Well, I'm totally stumped, mystified, surprised that Fed officials don't seem to acknowledge that just focusing on the Fed funds rate as part of the monetary tightening cycle is a mistake when you also have QT2 and you have a soaring dollar. These are very restrictive monetary developments. And I believe that they're not going to get up to 4.5%, 5% on the Fed funds rate. I think they got one more rate hike coming in early November, and that'll be it because the financial stability issue will pop up as primary concern.
Hold on a second. So, Ed, you think that they're going to raise rates, possibly even by 75 basis points. I'll let you speak for yourself. And then that's it because something breaks. What breaks?
Well, I think it's already breaking. I think what's breaking is the soaring dollar. The soaring dollar has been associated in the past with creating financial crises on a global basis. We have to have a global perspective on all this, and this tight monetary policy here is having a tremendous impact on the rest of the world, especially in the emerging markets where companies do tend to, and governments do tend to borrow in dollars, and a soaring dollar is just killing them.
And Ed, you've been somewhat constructive on the U.S. stock market longer term, more constructive than a lot of people. Correct. And yet Mike Wilson over the weekend said that light at the end of the tunnel that you might see from a Fed that does pause or even pivot is actually a freight train of the oncoming earnings recession that the Fed cannot stop. How do you deal with the earnings recession that will ensue from some of the tightening that would be necessary, a prerequisite for the Fed to maintain that pause?
Well, again, I take a global perspective. From a global perspective, I agree with Mike Wilson that there is a recession out there, but I think it's in Europe, and I think it's in China, and I think it's basically in the rest of the world, and the rest of the world needs a safe haven, and the safe haven is the United States. So the dollar remains strong, money continues to pour into the U.S. Credit markets, and I think you're also going to see some money coming into the equity markets on a global basis. I see earnings going sideways. I think we're already in a recession. It's just a growth recession. We have had 2 quarters now of no growth. I think third quarter is going to shape up something also similar to that, maybe slightly positive. Fourth quarter, a continuation of that growth recession. So I think that's what we experience. I think on balance, we make it through this in much better shape than the rest of the world.
I just want to finish on the bond vigilantes. Your term, you coined it a long time ago.
Yes.
Do you think these central banks will allow the bond vigilantes to wreak havoc through bond markets for longer than a week?
Well, I think what the Bank of England did is an example of what the template for what the others are likely to do. I do think there's similarities between what's going on and sort of moving towards the Japan model of keeping a peg on the long end.